Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today with us for the last session of our Spring School Garden Leadership Training Series. We're excited to have you here with us as we learn more about the exciting world of soil in this session titled NPK Alphabet Soup, Navigating Fertilizers. My name is Tiffany Torres, and I'm the State School Garden Specialist with Florida Agriculture in the Classroom, and I'll be facilitating today. We have a variety of speakers here today to teach you everything from the technical aspects of fertilizer application to curriculum, and even some student presenters from a successful FFA chapter in Alaska. Next, I'm excited to announce that we will continue to offer the School Garden Leadership Training Series in the 2021 and 2022 school year. Registration will be announced soon, so please check the websites of both Florida Agriculture in the Classroom and University of Florida IPIS Extension Family Nutrition Program for more details. We hope that you'll continue to grow with us into the upcoming school year and stay connected with us over the summer. If you'd like to view any of our previous sessions from the fall and spring, you can find them on our YouTube channels. And don't forget to visit the shared Google Drive folder to view slideshow presentations and additional resources. And before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to take a moment to remind you of the goals of this training series and our host for today in case anyone is joining for the first time. The webinar series is brought to you by Florida Agriculture in the Classroom and the University of Florida IPIS Extension Family Nutrition Program. All webinars are recorded for future viewing and CEUs are available upon request. And this webinar series is really designed for Florida school garden leaders of all levels to build gardening confidence, foster collaboration among leaders, and strengthen garden programs for long-term success. And we do this by including 3 core elements into each of our trainings where possible, which include gardening, knowledge, curriculum connections, and community organizing strategies. So speaking of community, we also encourage you to continue to network using our Facebook group, which is linked in the chat box and at the end of the presentation. We're going to keep that open all summer for you all as well to continue to network with one another. And so a little bit more about our first host, which is Florida Agriculture in the Classroom. We are a statewide nonprofit organization funded through the Specialty License Plate Ag Tag. We provide educational resources for free, including school garden curriculum, activity newspapers, and agricultural themed lessons. We also offer farm to school programming, such as the Agricultural Literacy Day, virtual farm field trips. Our first one is on May 25th, so save the date and we'll have registration open soon on our website. Workshops and trainings and school garden consultation. We also offer grants and awards such as teacher grants, school garden grants, volunteer grants, all of which will be open again in the fall. And our Excellence in Teaching Ag Award as well. And you can see all of our contact information there on the right, so please reach out anytime. And our other co-host partner is the University of Florida Extension Family Nutrition Program, or FMP. FMP provides SNAP education in Florida in 40 counties, and that nutrition education is free. They've been doing that since 1996. FMP helps limited resource families in Florida access more nutritious food choices on a budget and adopt healthier eating and physical activity habits to reduce the risk of obesity and chronic disease. And so now I'll introduce our speakers for today so that we can dive into our content. We have Molly Jamison here with us from University of Florida IPIS Extension at Leon County. She is the Sustainable Agriculture and Community Food Systems Agent, and she has a wealth of knowledge in all things soil science. We also have representatives from Nutrients for Life, Tracy Baxter, who's the Florida Regional Representative, and Melissa Big, who is the Kansas Regional Representative, and they're going to share some about their curriculum. And then I'm very excited to say that we have some guests with us all the way from Alaska today, very different than Florida, and we want to give them a warm welcome. We have the Silent Spring FFA Future Farmers of America chapter, which is led by Mr. Scott Faulkner, who's the instructor. And we have Andrew Trombley, Levi Faulkner, Joanna Trombley, and Emily Faulkner there. And they're going to share some about some of the applications that they've done with soil science. And just a brief overview of what we'll move through today. First, we'll start with our technical aspects, so learn more about soil types, plant nutrients, types of fertilizer, and how to fertilize properly. Then we'll move into those curriculum resources that I mentioned and share some of that. And we'll close with the application case study from Silent Springs Future Farmers of America. And then we'll move into our Q&A session. And speaking of Q&A, feel free to put any questions into the chat box as we go along. We won't stop for questions during the presentation, but we will address all of the questions from the chat box at the end. And all presenters will be available after the presentation for a 30-minute question and answer period. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Molly Jameson. She's going to share more with us about soil science.
All right, thank you, Tiffany. Yeah, again, I am Molly Jameson with UF-IFAS. I'm a Sustainable Agriculture and Community Food Systems Agent. And so today we're just going to give a little overview about navigating fertilizers, because it can seem confusing when you start to look at your soil and what it needs. So next slide. So this is just a rundown of what I'll talk about, just trying to figure out actually what is soil, a little bit about forest geology, and then get into soil fertility, organic matter, a little bit on soil testing, and then looking at fertilizer amendments and reading the label and soil testing with youth. Next slide. Okay, so the first thing to keep in mind is that plants do this really cool thing called photosynthesis. So they really need the sun's energy to create the carbohydrates that they need to grow. So taking CO2, water, turning it into carbohydrates, and oxygen, which of course we rely on as well. They use chlorophyll that trap the sun's energy. And this is why it's real important that, especially like our fruiting crops, or tomatoes or squash, that they get enough direct sunlight in order to get the photosynthesis to be able to produce the fruits and the leaves and to be healthy growing. So that's definitely the first aspect to keep in mind when it comes to plant health. Next slide. So we think of the sun as providing the energy for the plants to create carbohydrates, but you can think of the soil, or at least the nutrients that a plant takes up from some kind of amendment, as their vitamins. So they need the sun, but they also need their vitamins just like we do. Next slide. So we call the vitamins for plants plant nutrients. And so it's the fertilizer that we give to these plants that they take up through their roots, which helps them do all the different real important plant functions. So, without these nutrients, they just wouldn't be able to live. They wouldn't have cell division, create enzymes, hormones, photosynthesis itself, to respire. So these are the main nutrients that a plant needs. So macro and micro, even though these on the left, the macro, they need in more quantity, they're just as important on the right, the micronutrients. They just need them in less quantity. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, we tend to focus on those a little more in fertilization just because they need them in the greatest quantity. The micronutrients they need as well, but usually they can pick up those nutrients from their soil a little bit easier just because we don't need as much of them. Next slide. So the plant roots absorb the nutrients from the soil solution. So it's real important that there's water involved, because without water, then the plants can't take up the nutrients. And then these nutrients are going to be more or less available depending on different factors. So we're going to talk about soil type, what pH means, nutrient solubility, and microbial activity. Probably my favorite thing to talk about when it comes to soil. Next slide. All right, so what is soil? So there's the baseline definition. It's a 3D natural body that occurs on a land surface, and it's composed of these four main things. So minerals makes up about half of soil, 45%, and then water and air actually makes up about another half of soil. And I think that's pretty cool. When you think about, you're standing outside, you're actually standing on a lot more airspace that could be filled with air or filled with water than we would normally just kind of think is going on beneath us. And then this smaller fraction, the organic matter content, is usually less than 5%. Of course, there's a lot of different soils around the world. I know Alaska probably is going to be a lot different than Florida soils. But this is just kind of a baseline, what a soil typically looks like. And when we say minerals, it's the sand, silt, and clay in a soil. And that just has to do with how big these actual grains are. And they can make a big impact on the way that a soil can actually hold nutrients, which we'll talk about a little more in the next few slides. Next slide. Here is just a typical soil profile. So just keeping in mind that, soil does go down deeper than just 6 inches beneath us. And the top is what we call the O horizon. So if you think about leaves fall from a tree, those leaves decompose and they create the organic matter on top of the soil. And then beneath that, we have the A horizon. So this is the topsoil. So this is the mixing of the minerals and organic matter. And for farmers, this is a very, very important layer. You know, this is where you get a lot of the soil structure and a lot of the different nutrients that can grow healthy plants. And then as you go deeper, you get into like subsoil and the parent material, often what the soil was actually made up of through geological time. And then at the very bottom, we have the bedrock. So Florida is a little different in that it's not necessarily, you know, what's on top is not necessarily the same as what's on bottom. And that's just because of different deposits of marine sediments over time. And if you go to the next slide, there'll be a little more about Florida's geology. So we are situated on what's called the Floridian Plateau. And this is a broad and nearly level landform that separates the Atlantic from the Gulf of Mexico. And what's pretty cool is just 10,000 years ago, which in geologic time is really not that long at all, our coastline was actually 60 miles further out than it is now. So Florida's landmass was twice the size as it is. And then sea levels fluctuated throughout geological history, depositing these marine sediments on top of our plateau, and it's created about 11 marine terraces. So this is where we get those hardened like limestone that occurred, and because of that, this limestone is easily dissolved by water, which is why we have all these really cool sinkholes and caves and springs, what are called karst features in Florida. So it's really just all about this limestone that, you know, evolved over a long period of time. So a little more on soil fertility, you know, why different types of soil make a difference when you're gardening. So sand, you know, we have a lot of sand in Florida, and those grains are really, really big when you compare it to clay. So a clay particle, you think about clay, you can see it, of course, but you can't actually see an individual grain of clay with your naked eye. But sand, on the other hand, think about the beach, you can actually see a grain of sand. And the difference between those is huge when it comes to chemical reactivity. So a difference between big beach balls in a room versus, say, marbles in a room. You're going to have a lot less surface area in the sand. You're going to have a lot more macro pore space. So that's why we have good drainage in sandy soils. But because we have low surface area, it's very non-chemically reactive. So that's why it tends to have really low fertility. It just can't hold a lot of nutrients. On the other hand, clay and real organic soils, they have really, really small particles. And because of that, they have a lot of overall surface area, which makes them highly chemically reactive. And this is where you're going to have more soil fertility. So one thing though with clay soils is just because you have that fertility, it doesn't necessarily mean it's available to your plant, but it can hold a lot more nutrients. So that's just real important to keep in mind when you're, you know, considering what kind of amendments you're going to be adding to your garden and what kind of soil you actually have in your space. Next slide. All right, so these are our main plant nutrients, and some of them are called cations. That means they're positively charged. You think about chemistry. And then you also have anions, and that means they are negatively charged. And this has a lot of different implications when it comes up to how a plant can take up nutrients and what nutrients might become a problem for the environment. So you go to the next slide. All right, so this is the nutrient holding capacity. So a soil surface is actually overall negatively charged. And then you can think of that as like a magnet for positively charged nutrients. You know, negatives and positives attract. Soil's negative. If a nutrient is positive, what are they going to do? Give me a click. There we go. So the positive nutrients are going to be attracted to the negative soil. And that is a good thing when it comes to potential pollutants in the environment. So this nitrate right here that's circled, that is a negatively charged nutrient. Nitrate's real important. Nitrate and ammonium are the forms that plants take up for their nitrogen, and nitrogen is super important for plant growth. But because it's negatively charged, if you were to just throw a lot of fertilizer into your garden, not really thinking about how much you're adding, and the plants weren't able to take that nutrient up through its roots in time, because it's negatively charged, not attracted to the negative soil they repel, it can become a problem in the environment. It can leach through into our water, causing water pollution. So this is where you can see that green water, it's a eutrophication, algal blooms. That's because potentially, it's not just nitrogen that can do this, but it's a big culprit. Whether there was too much fertilizer added, maybe around the grass in that environment, the plants couldn't take it up, it caused problems. So this is why it matters that we all do our part to not apply fertilizer when it's not needed. And so a little more on that 5% fraction of soil. So organic matter and soil health are real important. Soil organic matter is those plant animal residues in microorganisms that are either partially or fully decomposed. And organic matter, you can think of it as the glue that holds soil particles together. So that's sand, silt, and clay. And this can really improve soil structure. So it's going to help you retain moisture in sandy soils. It's going to improve your drainage in clayey soils. And in Florida, we actually have overall low organic matter content in our soils. This is because we have a lot of rainfall, really high temperatures, which means we have a lot of microbial decomposition. And so there's just not a lot of that organic matter, unless you're in more of a wetland environment. So the big thing with gardening is you can add compost. Is going to increase your organic matter content of your soil. And the compost is going to have all these microorganisms, and they actually are converting different nutrients in plants into plant available forms. So if you have an apple, microorganisms are going to break that apple down. They're going to take that organic nitrogen and they're going to turn it into inorganic nitrogen. And that is the form, like ammonium or nitrate, that a plant takes up through its roots. So that's why organic matter, that's one reason why organic matter is really great for a garden, because it has all those different microorganisms that are facilitating nutrient availability to a plant. Next slide. And I like this slide just because it shows how much life is actually in healthy soil. So in just 1 square meter, you can have all of these different microorganisms. It's trillions of bacteria, all the way moving up kind of the chain of organisms. And in 1 teaspoon of healthy soil, you're going to have more bacteria than there are people in the world. So it's just kind of mind blowing. And when you think about how that can interact with your garden, if you have a lot of different microorganisms in your garden, then there's going to be a lot more competition and different little micro ecosystems that can really help make your garden more resilient. So it's just real important to add compost, organic matter to your soil. And so think about when you're using fertilizers, you want to think about, do I need it? So if you just built a raised bed, you recently added some fresh compost, you might not need additional fertilizer for this season. Some crops, you might need some sort of special fertilizer, and also depending on the composition of your compost itself. But it's just, you don't want to just add fertilizer just because. That said, if you are growing in an in-ground garden, maybe you're relying more heavily on the characteristics of your native soil. That is where you do want to really test your soil, and you can do that through UF-IFAS, and just figure out what type of fertilizers might be needed to best suit your situation. Next slide. So soil tests. Through UF-IFAS Soil Testing Lab, you can get your soil tested. So it's about $10, and it'll test your pH, your main macro and micronutrients. You can pick up a soil test bag from any of our local extension offices, and there's actually an extension office in every county in Florida, and it'll have information on how to take that test. You'll send it into a bag with the form to the testing lab in Gainesville, and then if whatever county you put on that form, those extension agents are going to get a copy of your results. So if you get this form back, with your results and you don't understand what's going on, then you can give your local extension office a call, and we can help you, figure out what's going on that form. So definitely check out your local extension office to get your soil tested. Next slide. And I have to bring up pH a little bit because it's definitely an important thing to think about if you are to have any out of whack pH numbers in your soil test. So pH is technically the measure of concentration of hydrogen ions. It's a scale from 0 to 14, 14 being more alkaline, 0 being very, very acidic. So you see on the scale battery acid, real acidic, bleach is more up there around 13. And kind of depending on what was going on in that environment, your soil could be more acidic or alkaline. So if it's formed under like a pine flatwoods, you're going to tend to have a little more acidic soil. If your soil was formed on a high calcium materials, limestone, seashells, then you might have a more naturally alkaline soil. If you go to the next slide, this is why it matters. So you could have all the nutrients in the world in your soil, but if your pH is off, then they're not going to be available to the plants. So if you look at this chart, around 6 to 7, maybe 5.5 to 7, that is the sweet spot for nutrient availability in soil. So the larger the bars of these nutrients, the more available it is at that pH. So if you have a really nutrient toxicity, that will be more common if you have a lower pH, and then the nutrient deficiency is going to be more common at higher pHs. But the big thing is you just want to make sure your pH is somewhere between about 5.5 and 7, just to make sure that those nutrients will be available to the plant. So if you get your soil test back and you're out of that range, then we could help you figure out, what you need to add to try to help get your pH a little closer to neutral. Next slide. So just kind of logistically a great thing to do if you want to get some compost to start your garden is you can go to like a landscape nursery that's near your area and ask them for a vegetable garden mix. Usually they'll be able to offer like a 50-50 topsoil compost type mix. There's just a lot of different materials that can go into these: composted chicken manure, mushroom compost, that kind of thing. Once you have a good reputable source, this can be your base for growing your plants. And a rule of thumb, about a cubic yard is going to fill up a 4x8 raised bed. So think of like the back of a pickup truck for each 8x4 raised bed. And then if you get it delivered in bulk, it's definitely a good option, especially if you're doing more than one raised bed. Usually they will require maybe a $30 to $50 delivery fee. But that's just a really great way, depending on whatever's going on in your native soil, this can really help you grow healthy plants very easily. Next slide. And just to highlight again the benefits of compost, it's going to provide a slow release nutrients for plants. Those microorganisms are going to be slowly breaking those materials down. It helps build those soil aggregates, acting like that glue to hold soil together, improve soil structure, water holding capacity, decrease your soil bulk density, so you're going to have more airflow for those roots to be able to grow. So I know that the Alaska FFA, they've been working with some compost teas. So same kind of thing. It's just a really great way to get your plants what they need to grow real healthy plants in your garden. Next slide. So that said, sometimes you're going to have to apply certain fertilizer amendments. So here, fertilizers are going to be either kind of divided into two different forms, so like organic or inorganic, and those derive from plant, animal, or mineral origin. They're generally going to be more slowly available. Again, it's because of those microorganisms that are breaking them down. So you got your kelp meal is a potassium source, phosphate rock, phosphorus source, alfalfa meals, feather meals, that kind of thing. And then you have fertilizers derived from synthetic origin. And so these are generally going to be more available to plants, but they can easily leach out. So you really want to make sure, especially if you're adding a synthetic fertilizer, that you're only applying how much the plant is going to be able to take up. And then also it's really important to look for something that has like a controlled release coating on it. So that's going to help, you know, hold on to that say nitrate, so that it doesn't just leach out into your soil profile and become a water hazard. So then you have your synthetic ureas, triple phosphate, muriate of potash. But again, no matter which type of fertilizer you're using, it can become a problem if you don't use it correctly. So you just want to make sure to read the label and only apply, you know, as it recommends. So here's just a few examples. Osmocote, that's a synthetic fertilizer. Tomato tone is which one I use commonly. That's an organic fertilizer. But either way, read the label and then just look at your soil test for what you actually need. So that's the most important thing when you're applying fertilizers, is just don't apply more than your plant can take up. And here is just you've all seen a fertilizer label. You see these 3 numbers on the bag. That's actually going to represent the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium within that bag. And it's by percent. So in this example, it's 14% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus. We do tend to have a lot of phosphorus in our soils naturally. So especially if you're using an in-ground garden, make sure if you have really high phosphorus, you want to get a fertilizer that has no phosphorus in it. And then this one has potassium 26%. And so that means that there is a lot of filler in this bag, but that is, you're not getting ripped off. That's just so that you can easily apply these nutrients to your garden. So that's the main thing to know. You know, it has the NPK values, and then you just want to read the label when you're applying that particular fertilizer. Last slide here, it's soil testing with youth. So soil testing can be really great to do with kids because for one reason, when you're taking a soil sample, you actually do want to get a little sub-sample from different areas of your garden to make sure you're getting a nice homogeneous mixed sample that's going to really represent what's going on in your garden. So you're working with the kids, they can help you gather these samples, sub-samples, put them in a bucket, mix them up, and then you'll send them off to the lab. And when your results come back, that's when they can help you, you know, do some math and figure out what you should apply. So definitely recommend this as an activity to do in the classroom. And that is all I have. That is my contact email. If you have any questions, I would love to help you out or direct you to your local extension agent as well. But thanks for listening.
Thank you, Molly, for that super informative presentation. That was really fun, and I really learned some new things actually. So next, we're going to move into our presentation from Nutrients for Life. We have Tracy Baxter and Melissa Bigg, and they're going to walk us through some of the resources that they have available for free for teachers on their website. So take it away, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you can just go ahead and share the website directly. We'll paste some links in the chat box as well, so you can follow along.
Thank you, Tiffany. I really appreciate it. I'm Tracy Baxter, and I'm the Florida representative for Nutrients for Life Foundation. And Melissa Biggie is going to be is our Kansas regional representative for Nutrients for Life, and she's going to be working the video for us today. So thank you, Melissa, for doing that. I want to tell you just a little bit about the Nutrients for Life Foundation. They were formed from people in the fertilizer industry that wanted to have an influence with educators and to get some of the information out that they believe was very science-based. So all of our curriculum is approved through the Smithsonian Institute. So I want you to know that up front. And the other great thing about it is that it meets all STEM and state standards for all 50 states. So that's right there on our website, which we will show you. But here's my favorite thing that I love to tell educators. Everything we have is free. So our foundation is able to provide all of these resources to educators and now, of course, parents too, really anyone, for free. So I just thought that's an exciting thing for you all to know. And we're going to kind of walk you through our website and show you some of the things we have available, especially the people that are interested in school gardens. So Melissa, if you'll go ahead and share the screen, we can get started. And the name of the website, and Jennifer, if you'll put this in, is www.nutrientsforlife.org. So that'll be in the chat function. As you can see, very simple to just go to our website. We're going to click under the For Teacher button to start out with. And I'm going to show you some of the resources that we have available. All right, as you're going to see, this very first one that came up is a cross-curricular word magnet. So this would be a great activity to be able to do in the classroom, along with what you can do in the school gardens. Our curriculum goes K through 12. Oh, Melissa, will you scroll up real quick? I forgot to show them one quick thing, and this is important for teachers. If you'll notice at the top of this webpage that there's a place where you can put in search state standards. If you click on that and put your state in, and then whatever material you're using, it will show you exactly what standards are being used. One of the things we use for our high school that I love is the H2Know study. It's an interactive case study on water quality at Lake Erie. And it gives a teacher everything she needs to be able to teach this lesson. I think you'll love it. We have a periodic table that's available, and we also have interactive periodic tables. This is a fun activity here with the flashcards for students. They can easily just, you just order it from our website, which is free, and you're able to have flashcards for your students to use in class. All right, Melissa, I'm gonna let you scroll on down and take us to the next page. As you can see, I have about 8 minutes to talk to you about a lot of information. Real quick though, I wanted to make you aware of our middle school and high school curriculum, and also elementary curriculum. And a lot of the things that Molly talked about are actually in this curriculum. So I thought that was super neat. Humanity Against Hunger is a game that the students can play. You can easily download that. They have a wonderful time. I cannot say enough nice things about Journey 2050. Excellent resource teaching about sustainability in ag, using a farmer in India, a farmer in Canada, and showing how different farming practices and best management practice are being used. These are the two newest things that we've come out with. We've had our nitrogen cycle game for a little while, and now this year we've added phosphorus and potassium. So a really great resource for our students. I'm also going to take you down real quick and let you see some of our posters that we have available. All right, keep going. As you can tell, we have 4 separate pages of resources. So obviously we kind of love soil science at Nutrients for Life, to say the least. All right, so any of these posters would be available to you. All you need to do is put your information in the website, and then we mail it to your school. There is a $5 shipping fee, so we encourage teachers to get together and put in a big order at one time so that they can have the posters. And then of course, most of the things are able to be downloaded. Melissa, will you click on the MPK soccer poster? I thought this would be an excellent resource for a lot of teachers that are working with school gardens. It just shows how humans need nutrients just like plants need nutrients. So as a plant, it's going to need the nitrogen and the phosphorus and the potassium. So is this young man. He's going to need the potassium and iron and calcium, and they're nutrients. And it's very important to show to kids that these are on the periodic table, just like the things they're putting in their bodies. These are the things that we're putting into our plants. So, and so super simple to order and that type of thing. I cannot stress you enough what great quality this is. I wish we could all be together and I could really show you things that I think you would be proud to put in your classroom. All righty, I'm going to take you over to another one of our resources that we have that deals directly with school gardens. So these are some e-lessons that have been put together for us, and there are 4 lessons in this part, and they all talk about school gardens. One of them is talking about the plants all around you, the properties of soil, very easy lessons already put together to enhance your school garden. All right, and these are also, we have a lot of e-lessons on school gardens actually. This is the school gardens during COVID-19 e-lesson that we were able to put together, and also tips on mulching your school garden. And then I'm going to go into, I'm going to let her show you some of that. These are also e-lessons that are available. And then Melissa, if you'll take them to Dee's presentations. We've got the living versus non-living e-lessons. And then we're going to go to our video library. All right, and here are the elementary curriculum lessons, and these come with downloadable PDFs that go with each lesson. All right, and Becky, my dear friend, hit me in the chat box and said, can you go quick? So I really am rushing today. So I hope this gave you a little bit of an overview of what we have available. The last thing I want to make sure you know about before you leave today, Melissa, if you can go to news and events, is our professional development is going to be June 21st through the 25th, and it is virtual. And all you need to do is go to our news and event page and be able to sign up to be part of our professional development. This is the 5th year that we have done professional development, and we've just gotten really positive feedback from our teachers. And I want to let you know that we send you a big box of materials that you're able to use during that week as you're doing the professional development. So I cannot emphasize enough to you, I think it'd just be a wonderful experience. Please, I'll be on for the question and answer, so don't hesitate. And I hope that you'll be able to use these resources. And Jennifer's popping up our Earth Day, which is on Thursday. And we're having a virtual field day. And we have over 2,000 students signed up to be part of our virtual field day. So super excited about that. And if that's something that you might be interested in, I think we can still get you signed up. Melissa's the one that's in charge, so we've got a little bit of an in here, but they're going to be visiting farms in Iowa, Kansas, and Virginia, and having a virtual farm field day for Earth Day. Thank you all so much, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tracy and Melissa, for that awesome quick tour of all of the wealth of resources that are on the Nutrients for Life website. So yeah, please stick around and ask them more questions if you have any about that curriculum. And with that, I'm going to quickly switch back over to our presentation so that we can hear from FFA in Silent Springs, Alaska. Take it away. We're happy to hear from you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Florida Ag in the Classroom. We are the Silent Springs FFA chapter from North Pole and Fairbanks, Alaska. We're here to tell you about our indoor farm and how we care for it. We will focus on our nutrient system that we call Epect. Now let's take a look at what that means, how we build our farm, and how we feed our plants. Thank you for inviting us and joining us today. Next slide.
What is Epect? Simply, it is an advanced compost tea. A quick look at the acronym will help us. The E stands for enhanced. We have combined the biology from the low activity boreal forest soil with other soil bacteria to sustain our tea and advance its effectiveness. The P stands for perpetual. Gone are the days of mixing a compost tea, using it, and creating a new tea. Our brews continue to deliver. The diversity of biology allows it to sustain if enough product is left in our bioreactor. Typically 40% or greater before new nutrients and water are added. The A stands for aerated. Our brew and its solids are kept in suspension through a conical tank with air being injected in the bottom. Increased bacterial growth and reproduction occur with this action and introduction of oxygen. The C stands for compost. Organic material is consistently added to the brew to feed the biology. The T stands for tea, a complex, nutritious, transparent product that resembles a good Southern tea when held up to the light. Why would junior high and high school students from Alaska be messing with something like this? Let's take a closer look.
Next slide.
We are a school without walls. We have no facility or permanent building. However, we have found this to be an advantage. Our students have wanted to explore hydroponics and have a school-based project for members that could not host projects in their homes. Our members have personally seen the impact of a community that relies on over 95% of their food being imported. Our grocery shelves hold less than 2 weeks of food. Transport time via barge on the Pacific Ocean is often 2 weeks. Raging seas and other disasters halt that system of sea and rail transport instantly. Members wanted to explore growing healthy food year-round to help our community with their environment, sustainability, and low or no dependence on commercial products to raise vegetables in mind. Let's take a look at the facility our chapter built to explore this idea. Next slide.
Students, with the help of local experts, designed and constructed a complete contained indoor hydroponic system in less than 90 square feet. No complete turnkey system was available to fit the requirements of our area and system. The system features over 330 grow sites as well as a nursery. In addition, members built grow towers to be placed at alternative sites.
Next slide. To date, members have constructed dozens of miniature and large rainfall hydroponic grow towers to be placed in our community and help students, teachers, and businesses spread the message about growing local, healthy, nutritious food with minimal effort. Our chapter maintains several large grow towers that are used with Epect outside during the summer only. Many of the towers are in the classrooms of schools utilizing readily available commercial nutrients. Members have created a how-to video and written plans for these towers. These plans and video are available on our local Soil and Water Conservation District website. Next slide, please.
Let's take a quick look at the composition of our farm. It flows from right to left. All of our lighting is TA LED 6000K lights. They are not full spectrum as we are only growing leafy crops. The rack on the right is only growing leafy crops. The rack on the right is our nursery. Here we start plants in dirt. In the lower section, you see deep water culture radishes being grown. To the left is our dechlorination tank. We draw on city water, so it is important to remove the chlorine gases, as they are harmful to our biology in the bioreactor. Behind this is our conical bioreactor. It is a 60-gallon vessel. To the left is our NFT racks. We use the nutrient film technique to grow our dragoon lettuce below the system. Is our solution basin that feeds the NFT system. The manifolds are at the far left of the system. The entire farm sits in a bladder that holds over 300% of the total liquid capacity in the tank at any given time. Our system is located in a second floor office building. Now let's go back to how we put together our Epect. Next slide.
Members searched our community for a unique location to find soil. They looked for a location that had black spruce, was 1,000 or more feet from any known human activity, and somewhat accessible. Black spruce typically grows on top of permafrost. Students found the ice layer to be less than 2 foot deep. Soil was excavated that lied upon the ice layer. In the bucket photo on your right, you can see the deep color of the soil and pure white roots of the sprawling and tangled black spruce root network that were in it. This is the primary ingredient of our Epect. As a general rule, all soil has biology it can serve in the same way. We choose this area because of recent warming trends and the revealing of soil that has been in permafrost generations, hoping to reveal vibrant biology for our system. Now let's take a look at different kinds of bioreactors. Next slide.
A bioreactor is simply the place where bacteria come to feed and reproduce. We want to make the environment pleasant and conducive to this activity. A bioreactor can be simply made from a 5-gallon bucket or a 55-gallon drum. Air must be present to introduce a healthy supply of oxygen. It also serves as a method to keep solids in suspension. This is typically done with an aquarium, air stone, and smaller systems. Larger systems use commercial pumps. The shape of the tank may also be conical. This shape helps to keep the organic materials in suspension. The emptying of the tank when desired. The cyclone system is amazing as it uses air to not only suspend materials, but keep them in a swirling motion. We have found that a conical tank with air coming up from the bottom completes the mission just fine. Let's take a look at our first bioreactor. Next slide.
When creating a new tea or brew, you cannot use the product immediately. It takes at least 2 weeks for the biology to become completely active in feeding and reproducing from the new food that is given to it. You can see that our first batch was very active in the left photo. Epect gives visual indications of its health. A new batch will first off gas with a clear bubble. The second phase gives off a thick, rich bubble that has a tan tint to it, as you can see in the right photo. You can see the coloring of the product on the right in the gallon jar. Once the dirt is put into the bioreactor, it must be fed. Let's see what's on the menu. Next slide, please.
Our bioreactor is fed with organic materials. During the summer months, we grind and feed with chickweed that grows naturally in our area with great abundance. It is very sweet and the bacteria love it. Epect loves meat as well, but creates a strong smell if used in a contained area. We used fish emulsion and at one point learned this lesson. While other products can be used, we have chosen to use chickweed and rejected fruits and vegetables from our local community food bank, all of which are seen in the photo at the right. We take these products and run them through a grinder before putting in the tank, so the materials have a greater surface area to feed on and keep in suspension. With a modified tool cart with a garbage disposal mounted in it to accomplish this different products. An amounts cause the Epect to react differently. Next slide.
Eating and reproducing demand a regular, healthy diet. Our students have learned that the Epect will react in different ways to different foods it is given. It will smell different, look different, and the foam that is created will look different. The photo on the right was a result of an overfeeding of 100% berries being given to the brew. It gave off a very sweet aroma that filled the entire area. After the foam settles, it continues to give off gas and looks like the picture on the left. In this photo, you can see a brew bag that contained feed or new biology being introduced to the brew. We learned that the bag was not necessary in our heavily aerated tank. What all kinds of things do you think we will find in our Epect?
Next slide, please.
A healthy brew will be teeming with a huge population and diversity of bacteria that is active in the 65 to 75 degree environment. This, along with nematodes, fungi, protozoa, and microorthopods, keep the system in balance. They break down organic material to produce micro and macro nutrients. The product is ready to be introduced to our plants at a 16:1 ratio. More is not better in the concentration with the Epect or solution being given directly to the plants. Students love to see the biological activity in the Epect.
Next slide, please. Thousands of community residents were able to see the biology in our Epect at the Alaska State Fair. Members set up a booth, brought containers of the brew, made slides, and invited community members to view the incredible, hardworking community of microbes in action. Viewers were amazed to see microbes feeding on organic material through the microscope. More importantly, students promoted local gardens and hydroponic systems. Can Epect affect germination seeds and seeds as well? Germination rates, excuse me. Next slide, please.
Our seeds are immediately introduced to a 100% solution of Epect. After the initial inoculation, they are watered with a 16:1 ratio solution. Whether the seed is started in soil or planted directly in rock wool cube in the NFT system, the germination process is accelerated. We found that direct planting in the NFT system produced the best results. Next slide.
Our Epect solution is applied to the outside of root ball or the ectorhizosphere of the plant. Let's now take a look at the benefits of this type of application. Next slide, please.
While we certainly do not understand the entirety of the interaction of the microbes, feed, water, temperature, lunar, seasonal, and other atmospheric conditions and their effect on plants, we can state that we believe the following items are part of the Epect interaction. We will go through these quickly as we look at the next two slides. Epect creates a stabilized pH in the root ball. No need to constantly adjust pH in the brew or solution. Produces carbon dioxide for plant growth. Creates a microenvironment in the rhizospheral or root ball area for better plant nutrient absorption and usage. T encourages root growth, therefore greater absorption surface area, provides nutrition for plants. It does not require dumping of any water. All water is either absorbed by the plants or evaporates. We typically do not add salt-based nutrients, but when we do, it is a small amounts. The healthy bacteria consume the salt and process it, therefore not needing to change the water because of salt accumulation. Provides initial and supplemental biology provided from local soils, and Epect's biology is perpetual due to its complexity and diversity. It can continue to grow. like the bread starter in your mom's refrigerator, if enough biology is left in the bioreactor before adding more water and food. Next slide, please. Let's keep talking about the benefits of the process. Epect is adjusted based on plant response and need. Should be translucent like iced tea rather than coffee. Is used to inoculate seeds. Germination is accelerated at rates that significantly reduce production time, as seen in dragoon lettuce and radishes. Increases nutritional value in bricks of vegetables. The product tastes better and is better for you. Requires no pesticides. The biology defends the roots, stem, and leaves from undesirable insects, pathogens, and fungus. However, this can get out of balance and cause a reduction in its defenses. No need to wash leaves of lettuce when harvested, as there is nothing introduced to the plant's leaves. We do not apply Epect to the leaves. Next slide, please.
We learned a lot throughout the process of creating our farm and Epect. Most importantly, that every ingredient is critical in the final product. One item crippled us from the very first day. We tried to overcome, not understanding what the source was, but it ultimately took down our system. We were bringing our water from a contaminated well that had a pathogen in it. After learning this, we sanitized the entire system, started a new Epect brew, started new plants, and began using city water. The water proved to be excellent once the chlorine had been off-gassed. Local research scientists helped us diagnose the problem. As seen in the pictures, every sense was used. We used our scientific minds to determine the water as the source of our problem. Next slide.
After nearly 6 months of trying to get the system working properly, we discovered a pathogen was hindering us. We cleaned up the system and restarted new plants that grew at crazy fast rates and produced healthy, nutritious vegetables, everything we were expecting. After 2 growth cycles, it happened. March 2020 brought the global pandemic. We were prohibited to continue going to our farm. We harvested our remaining plants and removed the system from the building. We were able to set it up in a temporary greenhouse and raise strawberries throughout the summer of 2020 at a private residence. Next slide, please.
Thank you for the invitation and opportunity to share about our unique experience learning about plant nutrients. I know we have created a lot of questions and we'll be glad to answer as many as we possibly can. Here's a final thought. What do strawberries, Miracle-Gro, and maple syrup have in common? They are all antimicrobial and will kill your bacteria in the Epect. Thank you once again for your time. It was our pleasure to share this presentation with you.
Wow, thank you so much for presenting. That was a really amazing experiment to learn about, and I have goosebumps. I know a lot of people out there probably do as well, and lots of questions. So stick around for the Q&A, and we'll just do a quick wrap-up slide real quick, and then move into our Q&A session. So a few takeaway points to go with you today. First is that really you should know your soil type when you're working with growing anything. So whether it's in-ground or a raised bed system, it's important to know the qualities of your soil media. And fertilization is providing nutrients to the plants, which they then uptake through the roots. That's a simple definition that you can work with students on. But of course, like you just saw from the FFA chapter, it can get really complex and scientific, and you can go so deep with this topic. Adding compost to your school garden increases your soil's organic matter, like Molly talked about, encouraging more moisture retention and drainage. So compost is always a simple and easy way to go. There are many types of fertilizer, all that they can match you should match your fertilizer to what you're growing. So different crops have different needs. And it's important to know your pH level as you're gardening. So you can test your pH level as well as nutrients and macro and micronutrients through a soil test, like Molly mentioned, which are free through the University of Florida IFAS Extension. And there are many, many, many curriculum connections to soil nutrients and agriculture, like Nutrients for Life showed us. We have a list of a couple different links that we put together for you as well. So we're going to share those in the chat box too. And then I also wanted to close by saying, let students lead. I think that was super inspiring to hear what the students in the Alaska FFA chapter did, using the garden as a learning laboratory for their experiments and not just for a production-oriented experiment. And I wanted to close by saying that good nutrition really does begin in the soil. I think soil quality often gets overlooked, but I really love this graphic from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, which helps us better understand how soil macro and micronutrients play a part in the health of not just our bodies, but our food systems and our environment as well. And there's so much to explore beneath our feet. We hope that you're leaving this webinar today feeling inspired to take a closer look at the science of soil. So thank you for being here, and we will drop the link to this individual session survey into the chat box. And if you need professional development credit for this webinar, we will also provide that link. Stay in touch via our Facebook group, which we'll have open over the summer if you want to continue to talk and plan for your fall semester. And then our slides and additional resources will be available in the Google Drive folder after the presentation. And again, just a reminder to please join us next school year. We will have registration up for the School Garden Leadership Training for the 2021 and 2022 school year forthcoming. And feel free to be in touch in the summer as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Becky, and we'll move into our Q&A session if you're able to stay on.
Thank you. So the first question came when Molly was presenting. So Molly, you made a comment about the coastline was 60 miles further out. So the question was, in what direction? Towards the Atlantic, the South, the Gulf?
It is more to the west, to the Gulf, but also to the east as well. So a little bit of both.
And this is a question I had when you were presenting. So if our pH is not where optimal, what are the easiest, cheapest, best ways to change our pH?
Yeah, so you want to add some kind of, if your pH is low, you want to add like a calcium carbonate, like a lime source. And if your magnesium's low, you want to use dolomitic lime. So yeah, if the soil test will actually give you some recommendations on, what product to add for that. And then you can reach out to your local extension office as well. If you have a high pH, technically you could add an elemental sulfur. But one thing with soil is it does have a buffering capacity. So it's always going to be kind of fighting you to get back to more of its natural pH range. So it's especially hard to lower your pH. But normally the problem is you get more of acidic soil and that you want to raise your pH, and that's a little bit easier to do. Kind of depending on the buffer capacity of your soil, you'll have to add more or less and more often or not often. So it's really dependent on your soil type.
Kelly just asked, do you have any recommendations on applying lime to an already established plant or tree?
Again, it would just be providing like a calcium carbonate lime that you mix into the soil. And just dependent on whatever that pH actually is. And so the soil test, you can get a lime requirement test, and that will kind of give you an idea about the buffering capacity of your soil to help you make the right calculation on how much to apply.
Okay, Maria asked, what is the best way to apply fertilizer that's safe for toddlers and preschoolers to be able to interact with?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're applying fertilizer, you still want to use, safety precautions. Be careful with handling any of these materials, no matter what they're made out of. I'd probably get something like a garden tone or something like that. You can put on gloves and then add that material to your soil. And then good hand washing. Just make sure that everybody's washing their hands after and not sticking their hands in their mouths.
Somebody wants to know your thoughts on commercial type soil tests. So I'm assuming maybe the ones you get at Lowe's or Home Depot, or maybe even better than that.
I mean, there's a lot of different options out there. The one for UF-IFAS, I think it's depending on what you want. If you just need your pH tested, it's $3, and then it's $10 for all your macro and micronutrients. And so I'd imagine a lot of the other soil tests out there might be comparable as far as what results you're getting back, but I'm not sure about their different price ranges. You just want to make sure it's going to a reputable soil lab, no matter what choice you use.
For Molly, Selena wants to know, What are your thoughts regarding the nutrition of plants grown in soil versus hydroponics? Has there been any research on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's so the plant has to take up, what it needs to grow correctly. And so as long as you're getting that nutrient to the plant in some form, if you're doing it hydroponically, it's going to be in a water solution, and then it's going to be an inorganic nutrient that you'll be adding to that solution. So, I have my degree in soil science. I'm definitely more about the soil, especially we just have soil all around us. We might as well to use it to grow some plants. And I'm always been really interested in just the microorganisms and like the rhizosphere around a root. And we're learning more and more about the way that microorganisms interact with the roots, and helping facilitate nutrient uptake and just in fighting off any pathogens. So I think I guess I personally I like to think about the life of a soil, and not to say you couldn't add that in a hydroponic system, especially like something like a compost tea where you're adding microorganisms. But the big thing is just making sure that the nutrients that a plant needs are there and available, depending if it's hydroponic or soil.
So clarification. So somebody wanted to know, yes, adults should be the ones applying the fertilizer. Your students should not. But should you wait a few days before the students are touching and interacting with the soil?
I mean, you do want to be careful to make sure that you're not having any, harsh chemicals around any of the kids, or something that could be even just could burn a plant root, might not be great to be around. So I'd be careful, just make sure that if you did freshly add some fertilizer, that they're not digging in that area for a while. Probably shouldn't be digging in that area anyway, because it'll disturb the roots. But yeah, definitely just be cautious and safety first.
Okay, now we're on to the FFA questions. Selena would like you guys to explain a little bit more about how strawberries are antimicrobial.
Thanks for that question. Strawberries contain ellagic acid, which has been found to be antimicrobial. And one of our local scientists that work with is a microbiologist, and has alluded to that. And also we saw in one batch of our tea that it did have an effect when we put a lot of strawberries in it, that it did slow down the microbial activity in it, as observed through the surface reaction.
Selena would like to know, is your lab an internship opportunity for students, or is it linked to a class? Like, how do you use it?
It is our classroom laboratory, and we've used it for several classes. It does not have any links outside of our school and our classes. So what class did we do last year, guys? Horticulture, and we did several experiments in it, and several students have taken on their personal SAE projects in our laboratory, as well as agri-science experiments.
That's amazing. So I have a question. So your Epect thing, yep. How much tea do you get, I guess, a day, a year, a week? How much do you get?
You can set up a 1,000-gallon tank and produce pretty easily. We put in when we go out and collect, we bring in about 5 gallons of soil, and we use maybe a gallon of it in the 60-gallon container to get it going. So we don't use a whole bunch, and so often we'll just put it back in the freezer, what we don't use, to preserve it, and we'll bring it back to life later. That Epect, one other thing I wanted to mention about it is it can go into a hibernation mode, so we can leave it up to a few months and fire it back up. If we just leave it aerated and not feeding it, it'll go into a hibernation. There's probably a better word for that scientifically, but it'll hang out there with us for a while and be able to resurrect it and feed it again. Just like the state it's in, we're finding it on that icy layer in the tundra.
This is so crazy. I mean, we can grow year round here in Florida, and often not in the summer because it's too hot. So this is just awesome. So Kelly wants to know how often you renew your system with the new soil.
we never renew it unless, of course, we have an invasion of a pathogen. So we continually spice up the family. So we so we keep things interesting in there as there is a gradual loss of biological activity. So the students add in new dirt, and often we'll add in other commercially available different types of bacteria to keep the family diverse in addition to that. So how often does that take place? Every 3 months, we were adding some new bacteria to it and some more soil.
Tiffany wants to know, did you originally take samples from multiple locations in the forest or a single spot where the spruce was found?
While working with the researcher here, he had taken several spots, but it was like the dream spot of his to go to collect soil to start up a new batch of tea. So we, on that lead is why we went where we went. And we found extraordinary activity in that soil. Unfortunately, we're not able to identify all the bacteria in it because we would spend millions of dollars doing that. But it proved to be very effective.
How far away did you have to go to find that?
There was one person on here that's been to Fairbanks. We don't have to travel very far around Fairbanks here in the Tanana Valley to find these type of areas of permafrost. So maybe 3 miles from our main place.
Do you grow your, I know you had said you had to shut the greenhouse down for COVID, but do you grow normally year round and produce the tea year round? I mean, I know you said it can hibernate.
Only when we had the facility in the office building had we been able to maintain our tea year round. Otherwise, we'll be firing up a new tea here as soon as the soil thaws enough. So just for the summer months.
Do you sell the tea or share the tea?
We are more than willing to. What we haven't done is yes, we're more than willing to share it. Yes.
Oh, I just see somebody said, do you have extra produced, or if so, do you sell it commercially? So I'm not sure how one would ship that. And
yeah, we haven't tried it, but I'd be willing to try it if we froze it and then send it in a nitrogen container from FedEx. I suppose it would be shippable that way. That's the only way I can think of, because heat will, if we get above 70 degrees, it's done and it can't aerate properly. It'll die quickly.
And you said you had silt, like some kind of silt soil?
Yes.
Can we get a sample of your soil? I have never, we have sandy soil and we have some.
Yeah, well, we would be glad to do that. We'd love to do a soil trade with you, as a matter of fact. That would be fantastic. Yeah. So our ENR students could provide that for you. They would love to do that for you. So maybe we can have some further contact afterwards here and get an address or.
Definitely.
And then when we're thinking of quantities here, I know a lot of times, of course, it won't be dehydrated. At least from us, it won't. And we'd be glad to pass them along.
Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute and ask.
I don't know if you saw it back in the chat. We also provided our email address and our website, which also contains our email address. So feel free, if you missed something here, to reach out to us. We'd be glad to definitely exchange soil or send you some soil.
So this question, so we use this, so you said it has to stay below 70 degrees, correct?
Right, that's it, yes.
So we would probably have to keep that whole system inside, like an air conditioner or cooler here.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think it's just the different types of bacteria we use. One of our students had inquired about maybe using probiotics for people to put into our system, and then of course we had to identify that certain bacteria that function in our gut are functioning at a different temperature range than the bacteria in the soil. So we find that our bacteria, at least that we use, operates at and we could probably even go cooler and still see good results. I'm thinking.
If they use their soil.
If we use their soil, it'd be interesting to start a brew with your soil here and see what kind of activity we get with our temperatures, our cooler temperatures. and see if it's effective. That would be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be cool to send you a sample of both clay and sand soils since we have such diverse ranges in Florida.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that. We've done, well, we've talked about it. And we have the ability to do it. Is to start up multiple brews in 5-gallon buckets using a 4-port air supply, and then running an air stone down in the bottom of them, and we'd be off and running.
Any other questions?
I was curious if Tracy could share a little bit more about Journey 2050. I kind of think of it as a gamification Sims version of agriculture and food systems. So I'd love to learn more, and I think others would too.
I'd be happy to. It's one of my favorite programs out there, and Nutrien is the company that actually has put it together. And what you can do is simply go to that website. I think Jennifer will put it in the chat for you, and download the game. And then the students are actually allowed to play the game as you're going through. It comes with PowerPoints for the teachers that go through every single lesson. It starts out where it starts with basically sustainability, and then it gets into the environmental factors, and it's just an excellent program. I cannot tell you how much I want to recommend it. And also then it goes into the later sessions are a whole career focus where the students actually have an avatar and they're able to play and have different careers, and showing the diversity of careers in ag. So can't recommend that one highly enough. Also, I know Florida Ag in the classroom and myself were trained on coming in and doing workshops about it, and training people how to do it. But I've also had several teachers that have been able to download it themselves and go straight into it. So great program. Can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, and I just want to interject, Mr. Scott, that would be definitely a cool thing to use with your ag students within your program, because there's a lot of lesson plans and a lot of cool resources that go along with it, and you can track their progress, which makes it really easy to use.
Great, thank you. Can somebody drop a link for that?
Tracy, there was a question about grade ranges for curriculum.
Depending on what it is, it's all listed on our website. As far as what grade, is there something particular that you were interested in?
I'm not sure. I know Journey 2050, if that was your question, is more specifically middle school and high school. And some of the other states have said it fits really well in a couple places, but they've used it most in 9th and 10th grade.
Exactly. We've had a lot of conversations about this, and the Journey 2050 is the in-classroom program, but they also have the Farmers 2050, which is a game the students can play at home on their app. And Jennifer had shared with me that her son had played it, and he's like 9 years old. So there's a lot of really good options, and all of that is on the Nutrients for Life website. So I know we've got the link, but if you want to go there, you'll be able to click on it and get information on both of those.
Tracy, somebody asked for a little bit more information about the professional development with Nutrients for Life in June.
Thank you. Yeah, and that is for credit. So it's a virtual PD day. In the past, we've done it in person, and last year we did it virtually, and it was so well accepted that we decided that maybe this is the way to go. And what we like to do is then we have our participants sign up, and we mail you a huge box. And when I say huge, it really is. Of materials, supplies, hands-on type things that we're doing throughout the week. And it just has been a huge success with our teachers. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from it, and it is for credit.
All right, unless somebody else has a question. Oh, how long is it, Tracy? How many days?
It's a week. It's a week. It's a Monday through Friday. Basically, it's Central Time, so our time zone, we start about 10 o'clock in the morning and goes to say like 3 o'clock.
And I added the link into the chat box for that professional development day.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer.
All right, I think that's it.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. This was a super fun session and a great way to close out our spring school garden leadership training series. If anyone has any other feedback for us on what they'd like to see moving forward, we'll stay on for another couple of minutes as well, and you can informally chat with us about that. But otherwise, thank you our presenters for being here. So awesome to have all of you, and we look forward to seeing you in the summer.